Hey guys, Dr. Axe here along with my good buddy Lewis House. Welcome to Facebook Live. And today we're going to be talking about really how to heal your mind and emotions. And these are things you guys have heard me talk about before, how important they are to your overall health. You know, a lot of times we talk about diet and supplements and doing cleanses here on the show. Well, today we're going to be talking about specifically your emotions, your spiritual health, your mental health, and how critical these are. And hey, if you're joining us live right now, hey, take a minute right now. Help be on mission with myself and Lewis. Take a minute, punch that share button, click that love button. You know, there are millions of people today struggling with chronic emotional health, fear, worry, anxiety, grief, shame. And I really want to applaud Lewis. The reason I had him come on the show today is he, and one of the things I've said before is, you know, when you conquer something yourself, that's one of the things that really makes you an expert. And so Lewis has conquered some really big obstacles in his life. And so he's going to share with us today really how to break through roadblocks and really how to have great relationships and heal your body from that emotional and spiritual state. And feel free to let us know the city you're from, the state you're from, the country you're from. And we'd love to maybe give you a shout out here on Facebook Live. So Lewis, man, I know you're Ohio born and bred like I am, which is great.
Yes, baby. OH.
OHIO. All right. So, and you just came out with a new book, and I saw this is on Times Square. I was flipping through Facebook today. I saw, your face in this new book up in Times Square. So tell me about, real quick, what are some of the benefits people are going to get from the book, but also what's your story and what do you cover in the book?
Well, I see Andrew Easton here. What's up, Andrew? We were just talking about you. And I love everything that you do, Josh, and what you just said in the beginning is because it doesn't matter how good of a doctor that someone is in the world talking about nutrition and fitness and all these things. I remember talking to Dr. Lissa Rankin a couple of years ago, and she said she pretty much reinvented her practice because she realized the medicine wasn't actually serving people to heal from within. And when she said, hey, how's your relationship going with your husband? How's your relationship with your family? How are your feelings about yourself? Go work on those things first. People started having transformations in their body and in their health and stopped using food or alcohol or other things as addictions to mask their emotions. And they started living healthier lives. So I believe that food and what we put in our bodies is medicine. Obviously, you talk about this more than anyone. Our gut speaks to our brain, speaks to everything else in our body, and what I've learned as a non-doctor is that really what we put in our gut, it is our brain, and it tells us how to feel, it tells us how to think, it tells us the actions to take. But when we're unwilling to emotionally go through different things, or we're unable to express ourselves, then we start to eat and do different things that don't support us in life. So for me, as a guy growing up playing sports in the Midwest, I masked a lot of my emotions, and I didn't really open up a lot. And these masks kind of held me back and hurt me physically and emotionally. So I'm not sure if I lost you there, but you're frozen for a second, Josh. I don't know if you're back on or not, but I'll keep talking just in case the people can't hear me. And so the reason I wrote this book was to help men and women understand the pressures that men have faced and the emotional stress that men put on themselves, which causes physical pain and physical discomfort and dis-ease. So if you guys are still on right now, I'm not sure if I lost Josh or if he lost me, but go ahead and type in if you can still hear me and if you can still see me. Okay, perfect. So I think hopefully we'll get Josh back on here in a second. And so I wanted to dive in and talk about this because I believe everything that I'm seeing in the media lately, if you guys can relate, how many of you have seen how horrible things have been in the media? Just type in yes if you agree that a lot of these things, including the sexual harassment, the sexual abuse, the domestic violence, the mass shootings, the mass bombings, all these things that are happening in the world right now, there's one common denominator, and that's they're all happening because of men who don't know how to express their emotions in healthier forms. They're expressing themselves through negative forms of toxic expression? How many of you agree that as a human beings, we should have other ways of expressing ourselves and really communicating from love over anger? And when we communicate from a place of not knowing how to express ourselves, we start to do other things that are harmful to our own bodies. We eat horrible foods. We'll start binge drinking, taking drugs, which causes effects on our health, which then our actions in the world are more harmful. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to dive into this. You know, I've been conditioned as a man my entire childhood through sports, through school, to not show emotion, to not show a compassionate heart, to not be as caring about other people. And it's very contradictory to the way that I felt growing up. I wanted to give back. I wanted to be of support. But when it wasn't cool in locker rooms to be nice, or it was cooler to talk bad about people, that started to affect my physical body in negative ways. And it started to manifest through stress, overwhelm, heart palpitations. You know, almost 45% of men in the world say that they don't have one male friend that they can talk to and open up about their fears and insecurities. Now, for the ladies who are on here right now, I'm curious. I'm seeing all of you commenting right now. How many of the ladies in here feel like you get together once a week or every day with your girlfriends and you connect and talk about the things that upset you, that you're insecure about? Maybe it's a relationship challenge you're going through. Maybe it's body image challenges. Maybe it's something that you're upset about in society. How many of you guys are connecting at least weekly as ladies and talking about these things? A lot of my girlfriends do this. They're connecting every single day on the phone talking about this stuff. But 45% of guys say they don't have one male friend that they can open up and talk to about their insecurities. I'm seeing a lot of people say yes every single day. And so when you don't have someone, and for the ladies on here, when you talk to your girlfriends in groups and you connect about the things that you're struggling with or challenged with, what does it makes you feel better after you talk about it. And when you don't talk about these things, it manifests in the body. You start stressing out. There's overwhelm. And Josh said his computer is frozen, so he told me to keep going. So I'm going to keep going for you guys. It manifests through physical harm. We hurt our own bodies, and that manifests in the world. We aren't as productive in work or business. We aren't as loving in our relationships because we have more stress and tension, so therefore we're showing up tighter in the world. We mask it by eating bad foods to help us feel better, and the cycle continues. And the challenge is, as young men growing up, we're conditioned, especially in America, we're conditioned to not express our emotions. As an athlete growing up, I was told that it's not cool to cry. It's not cool to open up. It's not cool to be sensitive. And all we want to do as human beings is belong, is fit in, is feel like we're a part of a community. How many of you guys love the community that Dr. Axe puts together? It's one of the most powerful health communities on Facebook. It's unbelievable, the resources he provides, the commonality of the information, the other members of the community who are like-minded, who think the same way, who are growth-oriented. Now imagine if those people didn't accept you. They said, you know what, we don't want you in the group. Go be by yourself. We don't like you. You'd want to do anything you could to belong and to fit in. And sometimes that manifests. And that's what it's like for a lot of young boys. Now, I'm not saying that anything that these men have done in the media lately is justifiable, is okay, because none of it is. What I'm trying to say is we get to be aware of where the root cause of it is. Not just put a Band-Aid on it, not just give it medicine, not just try to help it really quick, but say, where does this stem from? Just like a doctor would prescribe, where's the root cause of this coming from? And that's one of the things that we've been talking about, not to be too self-promotional here, but the book is called The Mask of Masculinity. And it's all about understanding the different masks and tendencies that men wear to try to belong and fit in. As human beings, we want to be accepted again. Now, some of these masks, I'll just share some of them, what they are, and I'll give some good examples. The Stoic mask. Go ahead and type in the word of the mask that you believe here. Josh is back. He's back.
Well, hey, this has been great. Let me jump in and say this.
Go ahead.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
Technical difficulties. One of the things, Lewis, I was thinking about too as we talked about this, like I don't think people realize how every disease known to man is connected with emotions.
Really?
And these things that have happened, and many things that have happened in their lifetime, like in Chinese medicine, if somebody experiences the emotion of fear, it causes disease of their reproductive organs.
Really?
Yeah, if somebody experiences the emotion of worry, it causes disease in their stomach, spleen, and gallbladder. If somebody has the emotion of grief, like grief, sadness, depression, it actually causes disease in their lungs and colon. Anxiety is the central nervous system and the heart. So I just want to say this is so important. Number one, for people to be spiritually, emotionally healthy, but also if somebody's struggling with an issue like autoimmune disease, cancer. I mean, cancer is an emotion, emotionally driven by fear, which gets worse when you get in the doctor's office. So again, all of this is so good and so relevant as well as we're talking about health.
And here's the thing. I'm glad you're saying all this because it backs up a lot of the things we talk about. If we don't talk about these things as human beings, if we're not open, I'm talking about men specifically, usually men aren't as open talking about their challenges they're going through. It starts to manifest more in stress, worry, overwhelm. And I believe it's one of the reasons why men die younger than women. It's also one of the reasons why men are commit suicide 6 times more than women do. You don't see women just committing suicide a lot. You see more men doing this. The people in prison, the people who commit crimes are men more than women. There's a lot of these things. And again, when the study says that 45% of men don't open up, they don't have one guy friend they can talk to, it feels very isolating. You feel very alone. And if you don't feel like anyone else you can share with, then those emotions manifest more in the body and cause these diseases, which you're, so familiar with. So that's why I think we get to, and when we see this in the media more and more lately, again, the sexual harassment stuff that's coming out for pretty much every man in Hollywood, it seems like all these mass killings, it's like every 3 days there's another. I think there was one this morning. There was another mass killing. Yeah. It's like they're all by men. They're not by women. And I just think there's so many things as men we can start to condition ourselves differently and change from young boys to teens where we just start to open up and express ourselves in healthier forms. For me, that form was, okay, I'm going to play sports and I'm going to physically beat people because it's allowed. The challenge is for 3 hours a day when you're conditioned to not show emotion, to win at all costs, to get up and not show pain. It's hard to switch it off afterwards and be like, okay, I'm just going to be loving and giving, and I'm going to be sensitive now, and I'm going to show emotion. It's harder to switch it off. Again, I'm not saying it's okay for men to use as an excuse to then go beat their wives or to go kill someone or go sexually harass someone. But I'm saying we want to look more at the root cause. It's these conditioning early on, and it's hard to break that conditioning if someone's been doing it for decades.
Yeah, and I want to encourage everybody listening. Lewis covers this in his book. This is The Mask of Masculinity, and you can check this out. It's actually at every bookstore across the U.S., many across the world, and then also check it on Amazon. Even Amazon.com, Barnes and Noble, Books A Million. But again, check this book out. This book, I'm an avid reader, Lewis, and for me, one of the things I loved about this book, it was so different. There's so many books out there that you read that. I'm not like trying to, be negative or hit on people, but a lot of times I read books, I'm like, I've already heard this, I've read this before. This was such a unique perspective into how to heal your spirit, your soul, your mind, your emotions. And one of the aspects I really loved about this book is you talk about vulnerability. That's one of those key words. Talk to me about how big of an issue is vulnerability in men, and then how do you become vulnerable? For a lot of men today, we've literally never been taught, and it's so counter to, it feels really uncomfortable. Like, how do we do that?
Well, here's the challenge. I'll give you guys a great analogy. And for all the ladies watching right now, this is for you. I want to ask you this question. How many of the women in here would love for your male partner or your boyfriend, your husband, to be more open and vulnerable? Maybe be more expressive, connect with you in the eyes more. When you're sensitive, you would like for them to be more sensitive. Go ahead and just say yes if you would like the man in your life to be more open and vulnerable. And now I'm going to give you a great story that's going to clarify why a lot of the men in your life probably aren't. Now, I'm not saying all women are this way, so I'm not trying to get women offended in this moment, but I want to give you an example of what I've heard from some of my guy friends who are married, where the women in their life ask them these things. I'm seeing a lot of women saying yes here. So this is the story that I'll hear. Again, not all women do this, but this is the story I'll hear. That a man will say, you know what? My wife asked me to be more open and vulnerable, Lewis, and wanted me to express myself. She said when she cries, she wishes I would cry more and be more expressive. And when she's sensitive about something in her life, she wishes I would really tap into my heart more. And she keeps on me at this. And I finally said, okay, you know what? I'm going to be more sensitive. I'm going to be more vulnerable. I'm going to be more expressive in these moments of vulnerability with you. And the next time it happens, I'm going to do it. This is what they say in their mind. And then the time comes, Josh, and there's a sensitive moment. It's vulnerable. Maybe it's a sad moment. Something's happening. And the guy goes there. He starts, kind of breaking down a little bit. He starts feeling a little insecure, and he starts talking about it. I'm just not sure about myself. Like, I'm really sad in this moment. I'm not sure. I'm uncertain of the future because of this. I'm uncertain of feelings I have. I'm just kind of like, I'm just all over the place with my emotions right now. And I'm feeling very vulnerable. And then the woman, his partner, who wanted this, says, well, you can't be this way because I'm feeling this way and I need support right now. I need you to be my rock. I need you to be there for me. If you're freaking out and I'm freaking out, then what are we going to do? And again, I'm not saying all women do this, but this is something I've heard over and over again, where as men, you'll know this, all we want to do is make our partners happy. We want them to be happy and feel supported and feel taken care of and comforted. And if they freak out on us for expressing ourselves in any way, then we'll say to ourselves, never again am I going to open up like this. If the reaction of it's not okay, I need a stronger, more confident man in my life, then I'm going to swallow down these emotions in the future. I'm never going to shed a tear again, and I'm going to always be the strong one for her. Now, again, I'm just generalizing this. I'm not saying this happens for every woman, but I know there's a lot of women commenting saying, yes, that's me. I've done that. And I get to take a look at that as well. So if you want the men in your life to be more open, be more vulnerable, be more expressive, which I think is a healthy form of living life, then you get to create a safe space for the men in your life and say, listen, this is something I want you to do, and I'm not going to judge you or make you wrong for it. And again, I'm not saying women do this all the time, but you want to make sure that you encourage it because it's a conditioning that's not acceptable for a lot of men.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll tell you, actually, Chelsea and I were just filming some stuff this morning, and babe, you told me I needed to be more vulnerable, right?
And then she freaked out on you when you were.
But yeah, I mean, it's something to where, I mean, it's healing, right? When we have stuff that's hidden that we put down deep somewhere, it's like a breeding ground for disease, for negative emotions, resentment in relationships. We act out on our partners or spouses or people that are close to us.
And I'm also saying, listen, I'm not saying like it's a woman's responsibility to get men to open up. I'm not saying any of this. We're all responsible for our actions and our emotions. But if you're in a partnership with someone, then it may take time, if they have 20 years of conditioning, to encourage them. A habit just doesn't form after one instance. It may take years of continually supporting them to open up and getting them to express themselves. And you'll notice when they start to open up, they're going to feel less stressed and anxious and tight. And as you know, as a former athlete, that the only way to perform at our best in sports or in anything is to be relaxed and in flow.
Yeah.
But if we're constantly feeling this tightness of emotion and anxiety and like our heart is in a prison, then we're always going to be a little rigid when we're performing in life in general, and we'll never be able to perform at our best.
Yeah, hey, I want to encourage all the viewers here watching. I want to say, hey, thanks to everybody who's on the broadcast right now. And I'm interviewing, you can see up here, Lewis House. So if you're just jumping on here and you're not familiar with Lewis, I would consider him to be, if people are like, what does Lewis do? I would say world changer. I mean, really, in terms of, you're somebody that really inspires people, is what I would say. Anytime I hang out with you or watch a video you post or read a book you write, I just feel inspired. I feel stronger internally. And I want to encourage you guys, especially whether you're a male or female watching this, or maybe you know somebody, maybe you're a wife and you're thinking about this for your husband who struggles with anger, maybe depression, maybe just it doesn't have that, in Chinese medicine they call it qi, this sort of like this life and energy and vitality about them. I want to just encourage you, hey, check out this book. This book just came out and released. I got an early copy here. This is The Mask of Masculinity. Okay, Lewis House here, who I'm interviewing. And this book is fantastic. It really goes through how to be vulnerable, how to create spiritual, emotional, and breakthroughs in your life. And again, this is especially good for men. It's also good for women. And again, if you really want to also understand men and maybe why they act the way they do, maybe why, we have some of the negative emotions we tend to have. Lewis really does. You do such a good job, Lewis, in covering in this book. And again,
Thanks,
you can pick it up in bookstores all over the country. So, Lewis, I mentioned this earlier. I know that one of the things I was so impressed with is, again, I was on Facebook and I watched one of your videos of you talking about your own struggle and really how you experienced abuse as a child. Could you share just a little bit of that with us in terms of why you wrote the book and really, what you did to overcome these things?
Yeah, when I was 5, I was raped by a man that I didn't know. And there's no way 4 years ago I would have been able to just talk about that openly with you or anyone. And it wasn't until 4 years ago when kind of the perfect storm happened in my life in a negative way, where I was in a very toxic relationship that I didn't know how to communicate and express myself, my needs, my desires. So I would take that anger and frustration in the relationship out into the real world. I would get in a lot of fights with people. I wouldn't fight her necessarily because I just tried to please her and make her happy. But I would take that anger and say, okay, I'm going to go fight other men. If anyone looks at me the wrong way, if anyone cuts me off, like I was just whatever it was to defend myself and let that anger out. I got in a bad fight with my business partner, not a physical one, but just like really, it's kind of a toxic 6-month breakup with my business partner. And then I finally got in a physical fight. I was playing a basketball game and someone headbutted me and I just kind of exploded on this guy. And it was at that point where I ran home like a coward afterwards, looked myself in the mirror and said, "Who are you?" I was 30 years old and I was just like, why am I so angry? I had everything on the outside that looked great. I was making, millions of dollars in my business. I had achieved a lot in my business and in sports. I had all these accomplishments that I could talk about in my bio. In my 20s, I was able to get the hot looking girlfriends, which looked cool to other guys. All these things I was achieving, but none of it made me feel good inside. None of it gave me inner peace or fulfillment. And so I luckily had some good friends from the Midwest who said, okay, we're here to support you. Like, how can we help you get out of this? I started going to therapy sessions from therapists I knew. I started hiring coaches. I went to workshops. I was just like, I need to learn about why I'm unhappy on the inside. And that's when I finally started to open up. And for 25 years, no one knew this story of me being raped by a man and a lot of other things that I just never opened up about because I was living in so much shame, insecurity, guilt, fear that if anyone knew these things about me, no one would love me or accept me. And so I said, what can I do to prove my value in the world so that people will accept me? Because if they knew these other things, there's no way they would. And when I finally opened up about these things, it was like the greatest weight lifted off my shoulders because I felt free for the first time emotionally. People actually said, wow, I trust you more than ever now. I want to support you more than ever now that you're willing to be vulnerable and open up. Like, I liked you before, but I kind of judged you also because you never were really willing to open up. And once I started to open up, my relationships transformed, my health transformed, my business grew. Like, all the things that I was looking for actually became that flowed to me much more effortlessly. Now, it was the most scary and challenging thing to actually start talking about these and tell my family what had happened, tell my friends what I was afraid of. And then I started talking about it publicly, and it was terrifying, but it was the most freedom I'd ever felt. And it transformed my life. And I started going down the rabbit hole of understanding, wow, as I started to publicly talk about these things, hundreds of emails from men were sending me essays about the sexual abuse they went through, or something other troubling that they went through that they haven't told people about. And I realized, wow, men are suffering inside in our society, and they're unwilling to talk about these things because it makes them look weak. It makes them look less than a man. It makes them look like any other word that we heard in the locker rooms or in school if you did anything sensitive at all. And that's when I said something needs to shift. With all this happening, every year you see domestic violence with pro athletes who are beating their wives or something happens. You see suicides from some of the top athletes in the world. After a couple of years when they retire, they commit suicide. Junior Seau. You see Robin Williams, one of the most successful and funniest human beings ever to walk the earth, who impacted the world with everything he did, unwilling to live a fulfilling, happy life. He could make everyone else laugh, but he couldn't make himself laugh. And so he ended his life. We see this where in Vegas, in shootings, it's like a man didn't know how to express himself emotionally, didn't have the emotional courage. So let me just take a bunch of guns and unleash it in Vegas and then take my own life. We see this with the sexual harassment, abuse happening in Hollywood, with companies at Uber and NPR and all these things happening. Why are men unable to express themselves in healthier forms, I thought. And for me, for 25 years, I didn't know how to either. And the conditioning was so powerful to try to fit in and belong and be accepted that it's just it's a magnetic force that is hard to break in our society. And I'm so glad. It's unfortunate, all the stuff that is happening in the media right now. It's very unfortunate. If we look at the positive side of things, it makes us have a conversation more about this topic on how we can start to heal from the inside from men on an earlier age so that this doesn't manifest later in men's lives. And that's why I wanted to write this book.
Yeah, Lewis. I mean, and this is something where, and I'm not sure if you know, I mean, do you know the statistics for how many both men and women experience abuse sometime in their life?
1 in 6 men and 1 in 4 women is the sexual abuse statistics that I'm familiar with.
I mean, that's just huge. And think about, I mean, I would guess that
it's probably more. Yeah,
less than 1% of people or men actually ever go out there and say it, or I mean, less than 10. I mean, it's low.
Listen, it's already. I mean, it's hard enough for women to talk about it, even though it's more acceptable. There's more groups, there's more places to share and talk about things, but it's still a shameful, guilty, horrible feeling to want to talk about it as a woman.
Yeah.
But as a man, there's not like a, hey, if you've been sexually abused as a 5-year-old, here's the hotline to call. There was no resources for me as a child, as a teenage boy, as an adult man, until I finally had this huge breakdown in my life where all these things were happening. And I was like, okay, I need to figure out a solution, because just going to make more money and having more things like is not fulfilling me.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah, let's talk about the solution here. And again, hey, by the way, if this message is resonating with you and you really believe, like I do, that this is a message that everyone needs to hear. This is a message the world needs to hear. Hey, help us share this just simply on Facebook. If you're on right now watching this live, just hit the share button, or hey, if you love Lewis's message, what he's teaching here as well, the love or like button as well. We just appreciate everybody. I see a lot of thumbs up and hearts right now. I just want to thank everybody who's on mission, because there's a lot of people. You know, it's one thing where if you see somebody with, you know, a skin condition, you can tell that's on the outside, but so many people are living with this cancerous disease of shame and resentment, these negative emotions that are literally eating them up inside. And more people need to hear this message. And again, just want to encourage everybody. Lewis, in his new book we're talking about right now, The Mask of Masculinity, he covers this in his book. You can pick it up on Amazon.com, you know, 1 or 2 day shipping. Have it, go to your local bookstore, Barnes & Noble. It's all over the place right now. Billboards in Times Square. In fact, it's on Facebook here. But again, this is a message that people need to hear. And again, even if you're, this is good for men and women. If you're a wife as well, or a girlfriend, you want to understand your husband or significant other. I think, again, this is a book that really sort of might take sort of the shades off and let you to understand this is the reason why people act away. And let's talk a little bit about solutions.
Question for you really quick before we get into solutions.
Yeah.
I'm curious. Now imagine a man who does all the things you talk about in terms of sleeping the right way, eating the right nutrition, the right movement every single day, you know, sweats constantly, moves the body, stretches, does all of the physical things correctly. Everything you prescribe, they do. Every supplement, all that stuff. But they aren't able to talk about their emotions with anyone. And they feel a sense of overwhelm and anxiety and stress, emotional tension, mental tension, heart palpitations because of that shame, guilt, anxiety. Will they still live a very healthy life if they aren't able to emotionally express themselves, even though they're doing everything perfectly prescribed in terms of food intake? It's all organic, you know, whole foods. It's, you know, they're moving the body, sleeping 8 hours a day in a sleep sanctuary. They're doing everything right, but emotionally they lack the skills. Do you believe that they're going to live a healthy lifestyle still?
Yeah, I mean, this is honestly probably the easiest question anyone's ever answered me, and the answer is no. I mean, you know, and even when you look at ancient medicine today, and what I personally believe as well, the emotional side of your health is probably 50%. I mean, all these other physical things we do are important, but your emotional state and health is so critical. Why can one person, you know, go out there and eat? Let's say, I mean, I'll just give you an example. Like, you know, I've been to Italy before, and some of what I saw these people eating, I mean, some of it was clean, but some of it was just bad. But, you know, part of it is I looked at those people and I thought, you know what? They were just stress-free. Like they were just living like they were full of community and life, and they were so connected to people. You look at Western society in America. Yeah. You look at Western society, and like the other thing, here's the other dangerous thing. I feel like when I went over to Europe and other areas, and again, they're not perfect over there. They got a lot of the same issues, but there was more connectivity. Like, hey, you got a problem, you're relying on somebody you're close to. A lot of people today, they go retreat and hide and isolate themselves. I mean, that's a problem I'm sure you see. What are some of the solutions to, like, somebody's struggling with some of these emotional issues? Like, what were some things you did, Lewis, or some things, you know, you got a close friend who's struggling? Well, where do people start?
It's the solution is terrifying, but also it can be very simple. And women have been doing this every single day for their whole lives in general, where they just connect and they talk. They talk about things. They have lunch, they have coffee, they have tea. They talk about the biggest challenges they face right now. And they feel like a weight is lifted off their shoulders. You know, in churches, this is why people go and do confessionals, right? It's somewhere to go and confess, to talk about things that they're going through. Afterwards, gosh, I can breathe again, finally. Someone else can relate to it. Someone else is willing to listen without judgment, without making me wrong, without trying to coach me up all the time, but just listen to me. I feel like I belong. I feel like I'm accepted. I'm not alone. When we isolate ourselves, like you said, we feel alone. We're the only ones on a deserted island, and we're unwilling to bring other people to connect and party with us. It can be like the most terrifying place to be on an island, or it could be the greatest celebration if all your friends and family are there and you're having fun, right? And I think that's the first place is to create a safe environment to talk about things. And maybe you don't feel safe around your partner, your best friend, your family right now. Sometimes that's the most challenging people to talk to. So that's why I think a therapist, a mentor, someone at the church, a pastor, someone at a coach, whatever it may be, having someone that is a confidential space. You know, the reason therapy I think is great is because, or at the church is great, is because it's confidential. You know what I mean? They can't just go and say, well, here's what so-and-so said to me today about their greatest fears. It's not gonna, it doesn't work that way. So you feel you have a safe space to talk about something. And I think you've got to commit to it. Every single week, you should be talking about the things that you're frustrated with. The next thing is, if you don't want to talk about it, at least write it down and journal it. Again, people have been journaling for as long as we can remember. And there's a reason why. It's very therapeutic. It's very calming. It's healing. It allows us to express it by writing it down and looking at it and just thinking about it and letting it out. So I think finding a place to express ourselves is powerful, and being able to do it and consistently and know it's a safe space. The next thing is to make a request with your intimate partner or your family and say, my request is that I'm able to express myself without judgment. I'm able to express myself to you and communicate my biggest fears without you making me wrong, or without you running away from me because I'm not strong in that moment. Or setting a time aside once a week where you say, okay, every Friday at 6 o'clock at night for 60 minutes, I want to be able to, you can express yourself all you want. I get to express myself. And in that time, we don't judge each other. We don't make each other wrong, but we're there for each other and we listen. Creating something that works for you, testing different things, you know, what may work for you may not work for someone else. But I think that's the first place, is feeling like we have a safe space to express ourselves. Otherwise, we're just going to bottle everything up and it's going to explode in some form or another unless we express.
Yeah, you know, and by the way, one of the things I always try and do is encourage people that, and also let people know that, I'm taking to heart everything you're saying. You know, that this is something years ago, and like when I talk about turmeric, like I eat turmeric every day. In fact, I just had a turmeric and ginger shot for lunch and a bowl of chicken broth soup. But the reason I bring that up is, you know, this is something that actually I did, like right when I graduated college. I got part of a men's group, and there's just a man in the group I really trusted. He was probably in his late 60s, and I just met with him. We went through a book called The Bondage Breaker years ago, and him and I wrote down everything I'd felt guilty about, everything I'd felt shame about in my life. We wrote it down. I wrote it down, and then I confessed to him. I confessed to God, and we just prayed through it together and just released myself of it. I'll tell you, it was the most freeing thing in my life, and I've done it several times since then. But I want to encourage everybody, you know, this is something, again, that I've practiced. This is something that I've had patients do. And Lewis, I know this is something that you talk about in your book. I want to encourage you guys, do that. These things that Lewis just talked about. And if you really want a guide, again, Lewis just came out with a book. And so you can check it out. It's called The Mask of Masculinity here. And he really goes through his personal struggle. He talks about vulnerability, but really goes through the action step as well. How do you break free emotionally? If somebody has been sexually abused, if somebody is living with shame and guilt, how do you break free of that? And one of the other things I'd say is great about this book, I mean, I know a lot of Bible studies today in church groups go through the Bible, which should be book number one. But along with that, I mean, I think this is a great book to read in conjunction with that. You know, whether it's a church group or a small group or just a group of friends or a book club, this is a book where if you really want to get to know somebody and you want people to open up and be set free and get vulnerable, this is a great resource to do that with, Lewis. I just want to say thanks, man. This is your vulnerability, something that you conquering, probably your biggest fear in life, is setting so many other people free.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I appreciate you, having this conversation with me. And again, it's my experience is different than everyone else's. I've been through certain things, and other people have been through different things, and we all have our own journey. But when we set ourselves free emotionally, I believe that's when we start to live the healthiest life possible. And again, you clarified it, that it doesn't matter what you eat, how perfect it is, the amount of sleep you have, the amount of rest you take, how much you move your body, all these things that a lot of these health experts talk about, which are powerful and are helpful. If we are emotionally trapped and living in an emotional prison, then it's something that's always going to be holding us back in our health. So to be mindful of the mind-heart connection to your health, I think is something powerful. And so if you're a man watching or listening, just be mindful of it. Continue to start journaling, find someone to talk to about these things. Whether you get the book or not is irrelevant, but being aware of this is what's meaningful and powerful. And I would say rank your level of anxiety, stress, or emotional tension right now from a scale of 1 to 10. 10, I would say 10 being the high. You feel trapped. You feel like emotionally unavailable. You feel like you're suffocating emotionally. You feel like you have headaches a lot. You feel like your heart palpitates a lot. You feel like you can't, when you want to say something, that the words aren't able to come out because you're terrified of what someone might think or respond. So that would be like a 10. And I'd say level 1 would be like you're very calm, you're at peace, throughout your day. You feel like you can say anything to anyone and feel confident within yourself. I think for me, I didn't feel secure with who I was, so I was unwilling to share people things I'd been through, my fears, my insecurities. Now I feel so confident that I can share with the world anything I've been through or anything I'm afraid of or anything I'm still struggling with, because it's not like I've elevated to the mountaintops and I'm like this perfect human being now. I still daily struggle with emotional fears, insecurities, challenges about what's right and wrong, and, break my word and do all these things where I'm not happy with as well. I think it's just being aware of it, working on it daily, and trying to get a little better every day.
Yeah, one of the things too, as I was going through the book, a lot of people don't realize this, but when you don't, and again, whether it's privately or with God or with one individual or a group, when you keep everything and put it deep down, what tends to happen is it owns you. You become a slave to it. That's the thing. That's the biggest thing. I know myself when I confessed and started doing these things, like freedom. That was it. Like I felt freedom, like this weight was lifted off my shoulders. And people today are just walking around with this heavy weight on them. You can literally see it with some people. It just starts weighing them down, and it ends up crushing their spirit. It ends up driving disease in their body. And by the way, I want to thank everybody who has been on the broadcast today and been sharing this. We really appreciate. I know myself and Lewis really appreciate all of you guys that are on mission. There are millions of people around the world today that have been abused and that are struggling internally, and they've never told anybody. And a lot of times when one person comes out and shares their struggle and how they overcame it, it really can inspire millions. So again, Lewis, I want to thank you for coming on the show today and everything you've done and being such a driver for inspiration. I want to encourage you guys as well. Check out Lewis on Instagram and his Facebook page. Those are two areas. I know I personally follow him and get his regular. I love watching his Insta stories. Actually, I was watching one of your Insta stories. This is a while ago. I think Jen, right, Jen?
Yeah, Doc Jen Fit.
Pull up together and the whole thing. So anyways, just want to encourage you guys. And what's your Instagram handle?
Just Lewis Howes. Yeah, it's my name, Lewis Howes. Yeah.
And you guys can see it here on the screen, Lewis Howes. So check it out. And again, check out Lewis's new book here, The Mask of Masculinity. It's in bookstores across the U.S. right now. You can get it on Amazon.com or online anywhere. And again, thanks to everybody who's been on Mission Show. We've got so many great comments of people.
Great comments, man. This is a great conversation. Great feedback from everyone. So thank you, guys.
Great. Well, Lewis, thanks, my man. Yeah, we need to do this again soon.
I'm down, man.
Cool. All right. Well, hey, thanks everybody for watching. Lewis, thanks so much. And guys, go out and get the book and check out Lewis on Instagram and Facebook. And have a blessed week, guys. Thanks.